Hello and welcome to This One Thing, a daily video devotional coming to you from First Presbyterian Church of Fort Lauderdale. And together we'll be looking at one text and choosing one thing for you to consider. And we hope that you find this a thought-provoking, encouraging part of your day. Growing up, my friends and I around the neighborhood spent hours playing games of pickup basketball and football and a variety of other games. And it's one of my favorite memories of growing up. I was lucky to live in the same house from the time I was 6 years old until I moved out. And over that time, kids around the neighborhood came and went. And so one of the first things that you had to establish when some new kids moved in and joined in the game, or maybe somebody brought their friends, first thing you had to do was, of course, establish the rules. Whatever the boundaries were, maybe what was out of bounds in football, or in the case of football, it was sidewalks, right? Or in the case of basketball, it was the grass around the driveway. You had to figure out where the end zones were, and a number of other things that had to be set out up front, because otherwise, in the heat of competition, things were liable to get heated. It led to arguments when the expectations weren't clear and weren't set out up front. It had a tendency to lead to arguments. And essentially, these rules, they provided a framework for us to enjoy the game itself. Perhaps you've seen this at play in work or your relationships. When the expectations aren't set appropriately, it can lead to challenging or challenges. And in Leviticus chapter 16, where we find ourselves today, this whole book is God providing the framework for their relationship. Here in chapter 16, God is laying out the rules for how the high priest is to enter into the sanctuary on the Day of Atonement. You know, Leviticus can be a challenge to read, and I think we need to approach it with this understanding that God is providing the framework for relationship, is providing this to the people of Israel so that they can enjoy the game itself. God sets out expectations for how they are to navigate the relationships. He sets out clear expectations. And in doing that, there becomes this sense of security in knowing what the expectations are and in knowing how to meet them. But in reading Leviticus, it's fair to assert, too, that it's going to be close to impossible, if not difficult, to always meet these expectations. And so here, right here in chapter 16, God outlines a process for making things right. As Samuel Ballantyne, professor of Old Testament at Union Theological Seminary, puts it, here in chapter 16, God bridges the gap between God's expectations and human failure with the promise of forgiveness. So friends, here's the one thing. It's that God has expectations for the ways that we live. But in Jesus Christ, God continues a pattern of what he's always done, and that is creating a way for restoration of relationship in the case of human failure. God wants relationship with you and with me. Friends, be safe, be well. Enjoy the game. We'll see you tomorrow.